Have you ever formatted numbers on a pivot table only to have the formatting disappear when you make some changes on a pivot table? Let me show you what I mean by that. Here we have some pivot table report. It's showing amounts by regions. Now these amounts are having currency number format and they are formatted as dollars, as you can see. That's why they're having these dollar signs. Now if your boss tell you that I want this report by agents, not by regions, all you have to do is to come to the pivot table field list, then you drag the agents to the raw areas like this, drop, and then you need to drag the region out like this, drop it out. You now have your report by agents, not by regions. But guess what? The currency number format that we had before has disappeared. These amounts are no longer having any currency number format as we saw before. I'm going to show you why that happens and most importantly, how to prevent it. In today's video, we are going to learn how to format numbers in a pivot table the right way. I will also show you how to display your amounts in any currency, not just in dollars, making your report easier to understand and more professional. This is what I mean. Here we have displayed these amounts using dollars, but here I've displayed these amounts using Uganda shillings, as you can see here. So let's switch on to Excel and we dive deeper into understanding number formatting in a pivot table. Now this is the data set that we are going to use. The first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to change it into an official Excel table. Now to do that, I'm going to click on one cell within that data set. I'm going to click on this cell, and then from the Insert tab, Tables group, I have here Table. When I click on it, I will get this Create Table dialog box. This dialog box that you are seeing here, I'm going to close it for now. Close. The keyboard shortcut to create the table is Ctrl-T, and it will open for you the same dialog box. Make sure My Table as Headers is selected. Then all you need to do is to click OK. This is now our Excel table. Let us now rename it. Now from the Table Design tab, the Property group, I have the table name here. It's saying Table 1, but that's not the name I want. So I'm going to click on Table 1 and then give it a good name. I'm going to call it Sales Transactions, and when I hit Enter, this table is now called Sales Transactions. Now let's create the pivot table, and to create a pivot table, you need to click on one cell within your table, and then from the Insert tab, click on Pivot Table. When I click on it, I get the Pivot Table from Table or Range dialog box. Last video we talked a lot about pivot table. You can check that video if you want to know more about creating a pivot table. Let's close it. The keyboard shortcut to create the pivot table is Alt-N-V-T. It will bring for us the same dialog box. You can see it got the correct table. That's why we have our table name here. We have to choose where we want to place the pivot table. You can place it on a new worksheet like we did last video, or you can place it on an existing worksheet like we are going to do it today. So I'm going to click on existing worksheet, and then for location, now you can place it on this particular worksheet that is having the data, or you can place it on another existing worksheet which is not exactly this worksheet, the one that has already been created. So I'm going to place it on an existing worksheet, but not this particular worksheet here. I'm going to place it on this worksheet called Pivot Table Number Format. So I'm going to click on it, and then from this worksheet I want to place it on B3. So I'm going to click on cell B3, and then I'm going to click OK. Now when you do that, you get the pivot table on the left and then the pivot table field list on the right. Now immediately you create the pivot table. The next step is to rename your pivot table. And to rename your pivot table, you need to go to the Pivot Table Analyze tab, and then from the Pivot Table group, you have Pivot Table name here. For now, it's saying Pivot Table 3. That's because this is the third pivot table I've created on this particular worksheet. But I'm going to rename it to Regional Sales and hit Enter. This pivot table is now called Regional Sales. Now I'm going to come to the right hand side. You can see our field list is stuck to the right hand side, but I want to drag it near the pivot table. And to do that, you need to come on top here. When you see this move cursor, you need to click and hold, and then you drag it to the place where you want, and then you place it there. So I'm going to place it here. Now all you need to do is to resize it. I'm going to come here, come down here. When I see this cursor, I'm going to click and drag it down to resize it so that I have my fail list. Here I can also click on top and then resize it like this. Now what we want to see the amount of sales by regions. So what we are going to do, I'm going to come to the fail list, click on region, and then drag it to the area. But I'm going to place it on the rows areas here. So when I see the horizontal green line, that means I can drop it. So I'm going to drop it there. Immediately you do that, you get a unique list of regions on rows. Now any field that you want to make calculations on, you drag it to the values area. And for my case, it's the amount field. So I'm going to drag it, and seeing the horizontal line, I'm going to drop it to the values area. Now as you can see, the field list is now blocking our report. So I'm going to move it a little bit to the right. So I'm going to come on top. When I see the move cursor, I'm going to click and drag it just a little bit to the side like this, and then drop it there. This is my pivot table report. For now, I'm not going to use the field list. So I'm going to first of all close it. So I'm going to come to the X and then close. First of all, this one is saying row labels. That one is actually not a good name. We want it to say region. Now last video, we click on it, then we simply type there regions. But on this video, I want to show you a different method. So when you select your pivot table, then you come to the design tab, click, and then from the layout group, you come to report layout. When you click on report layout, you have all these options here. The first option here is show in compact form. The second option is show in outline form. And then the third option is show in tabular form. Now what we are seeing here is actually this first option, which is show in compact form, but I want to show in tabular form. So when I click on show in tabular form, you can see what it looks like. Now you may not have recognized what happened, but first of all, our title changed from row labels to region. That one is actually when I right click, then show field list, click to bring back our field list. That one is actually the name of the field that we drop on the rows area. So I'm going to close this field list, close. Also, you can see when you show in tabular form, it shows you the grid lines. Before, we didn't have the grid line. When I control Z, you can see before there was no grid line within our pivot table. By the way, when you come to report layout and then you show in outline form, click, it also change for you the name, but it doesn't show you the grid line. But when you come to report layout and then you show in tabular form, click, it shows you the grid lines within the pivot table, as you can see. Then for amounts, I don't want sum of amounts, I simply want amounts. So I'm going to click and type there amounts, enter. Now let's see how we can format numbers in a pivot table. When you come to numbers like our amounts here, and then when you right click, you have two options here. You can use format cells or you can use number format. This first option, format cell, is actually not recommended. You always need to use number format. But let's see the reason why this first option is actually not recommended. When you select format cells option here, it formats for you the cell that you have highlighted. That's the reason why when you format your cells and then you make some changes on a pivot table, the formatting disappears. But let's see how it works. For now, let me first click outside. When I come outside the pivot table like this, click on this cell. When I right click, you can see we have a bunch of options here. We also have format cells option here, but we don't have number format. You can only have number format when you are within the pivot table. So I'm going to go back to the pivot table, click, click, and when I right click, let's first see the disadvantage of using the format cells option here. So I'm going to click on format cells, click, and when you do that, it opens for you the format cells dialog box. I'm going to close the dialog box. The keyboard shortcut to open Format Cells dialog box is Ctrl 1. It opens for you the same dialog box, but I want you to realize something. This Format Cells dialog box is having 6 tabs. The Number tab, the Alignment tab, the Font tab, Borders, Fill, and then Protection. What we want, of course, is under the Number tab, and what we want is currency. When I click on currency, I want 0 decimal, so I'm going to come to decimal places and change it back to 0. Now for symbol, it's saying dollars. When I click on this drop down arrow, we shall see how you can format it using any currency you want. But for now, let's first choose this dollars. And then when you click OK, you can see we selected only one cell and it has been applied only to one cell. So I'm going to Ctrl Z to undo that. If I select all these cells like this and then Ctrl 1 to open the Format Cells dialog box, then I come to currency, decimal places, I'm going to change it to 0. I'm going to first leave it as dollars, and then when I click OK, you can see it has applied for me the currency number format only on the cells that I've highlighted. You can see that very well. Now this one is looking like it's working, but let's see whether the pivot table will remember it when we make some changes to the pivot table. Again, I'm going to click on the pivot table, and then from the pivot table Analyze tab, you have the fill list here. I can click on it to bring my fill list. So when I drag agent and drop it below region, drop, it's looking like it's still working. But when we drag our region out, so that we remain with only the agent, drag, boom, you can see the number formatting is gone. So I'm going to right click. When you use the Format Cells option to format your numbers in a pivot table, it applies the formatting only on your selected cells, and sometimes when you make some changes on the pivot table, it doesn't remember it. Now let's close the fill list. I'm going to click on this close and then click on my pivot table, click. Now let's see how the number format works. So I'm going to come to the pivot table, right click, then do not select Format Cells. Let's select Number Format, click. This is now the option that you need to use. Remember when we selected the Format Cells option, this Format Cells dialog box gave us 6 tabs. But when we selected Number Format, it's giving us only one tab, that is the Number tab. That's how you can know whether you selected the correct option or not. So I'm going to click on currency, 0 decimal places. I'm going to first leave it as dollars. Before I click OK, let me first scroll this one to the side like this, click and drag. Before I click OK, I want you to realize something. I only selected one cell on my amount field or on my amount column. I didn't highlight all the cells. So when I click OK, you can see when you use the number format option, even if you selected only one cell within your column or within your field, it applies the formatting to the entire numbers within that field, including the grand total. And this time around, it applies the number format on the field, not on the cell. So let's do the testing. I'm going to right click. Let me first bring back my field list. So I'm going to select Show Field List, select. Now I'm going to drag the region and place it on top of the agent, place it here. When I drag the agent out like this, you can see our number format is perfectly remembered. So when you use this number format option, it applies your number format on the field, and the pivot table will always remember it even if you make some changes to the pivot table. So make sure you always use this number format option, not the Format Cells option. Click outside. Let me first close the field list, close. Now let me show you how you can format your numbers using any currency. So when I come here and then I right click, I'm going to select Number Format, don't select Format Cells. So I'm going to click on Number Format. Now I want to format this as currency. So when I select currency from here, and then when I come to symbol, I can actually click on it. And when you look through this, I don't have Uganda shilling here. And if you're not in USA, or let's say you're not in USA, you're not in United Kingdom, or some of these countries you are seeing here, you may also not see the sign or the symbol or the currency you want to use on this list here. So the trick I'm going to show you is going to be very important. So if you want to change it to any currency, or you want to use any symbol that's not in this list, you need to come down to the custom format. When you click on custom format, this is actually the power of number formatting. When you come on top here, you have the sample. The sample is going to show you how the number is going to look. But when you come to the type, this is where you can type the code that is going to display for you the number the way you are seeing it on the sample. And the way you are seeing it on the sample is actually going to be the way it's going to be displayed on the pivot table. So let me first move this format cell dialog box aside like this so that we can see our pivot table. So I'm going to come to the type, then I'm going to highlight this like this. Now UGX is going to be what we are going to use to show that it's Uganda shilling. I want you to remember this because it's very important. Anytime you're putting a text on the custom number format, you need to put it in quotes. So open quotation, I'm going to type there UGX. So when I close my quotation, you can already see that from the sample, it has already displayed for me UGX. That means when I click OK right now, it's displaying UG throughout, but of course that's not what I want. I want it also to display for me my numbers. So I'm going to right click and then go back to number format, click. Then when I come back to custom number format, I'm going to continue building my custom number format. So I'm going to click on the type. I want this to show for me my numbers. So the placeholder for numbers in custom number format is hash. So when I type there hash, let me first scroll this to the side. You can see that from the sample, it's already showing for me my numbers. But of course, the way you are seeing it here, it's actually very difficult for you to read. I want it to show for me those numbers using a thousand separator. That means after every 3 figures, it put for me that comma. After every 3 figures, it put for me a comma. Now, to do that, I'm going to put a comma after the hash. So when I put the comma after the hash, you can see that it has hidden 3 figures from the right. Immediately, I type there comma. So let me first backspace and do that again. You are seeing the last 3 zeros. The moment I type there comma, it has dropped those 3 values. It has hidden it actually. I want it to show for me all the numbers. So I'm going to type there another hash, telling it to show for me other numbers. So I'm going to type there hash, hash, and you can see that it's now showing for me all the numbers. Now this one is actually very fine. If I'm to click OK right now, you can see it's actually working correctly. But guess what? When I right click, then when I come to number format, click, again from custom number format, you can see it has actually added for me one more hash. Hash is actually the placeholder for significant values. Now assuming you happen to get a region, let me first drag this one here. Assuming you happen to get a region which is not having any amount, instead of it showing for you UGX0 for that region, it will show for you UGX nothing, because hash is actually a placeholder for significant values and 0 is actually an insignificant value. We need to use the placeholder for insignificant value, and that one is actually 0. So for this last hash, I'm going to backspace and use the placeholder 0. And when I click OK, this one will work actually perfectly. Now let me come to the design tab. Then from this pivot table styles, I'm going to click on the drop down. I'm going to use this style here from the medium group. I'm going to click on it. I want it to look like this. Now the way we formatted it might look a little bit hard to remember, but let me first highlight this pivot table and then Control C. I'm going to click on cell E3 and then Control V to paste it there. Double click to extend the column. Now let me first click on this, right click, come to number format. Let me first change it back to currency, and then I'm going to choose dollars. When I click on this, now let me show you the second method, which is going to be a little bit easier. So when I come here, then when I right click, I'm going to come to number format, not format cells, come to number format, and then from this drop down arrow, of course it will always come when dollars is selected, but I'm going to come to custom number format, click. Now instead of you coming to type, then you type everything afresh, you simply need to come and change the dollar sign using your symbol. So I'm going to come here. So what I'm doing here is actually just editing the code. I'm going to leave the rest of the placeholders the way they are. I'm simply going to remove the dollars, backspace, and then I'm going to replace that dollars with my symbol. For my case, it's going to be Uganda shilling. So open quotation, UGX, close quotation. I need a space between UGX and then the first number. So I'm going to go inside my quote, click on it, and then type there space. So I'm simply going to come down here, and then I'm clicking OK. And when you do that, you can automatically see that the number format has been applied correctly. And this one is actually looking very fine. Yeah, that is it for this particular video. This is a video where we introduce pivot table. You can click on it, then you go and watch it. Thank you.